In the vast, sun-bleached plains of West Texas, where the horizon stretched like a promise unkept and the wind carried secrets older than the Red Rock Canyons, there lived a man they called the Colossal Cowboy. His name was Elias Thorne, a towering figure of weathered leather and quiet storms, whose silhouette against the dying sun evoked legends whispered around campfires. Elias wasn't born to the saddle, he was forged by it, orphaned young when a dust storm claimed his parents' ranch, leaving him to wander the Badlands with nothing but a lariat and a heart heavy as lead. Folks said he could tame a wild Mustang with a murmur, his voice low and hypnotic, like the rumble of thunder trapped in a seashell. But beneath that calm exterior lurked a beast, a fury born of loss, waiting for the spark that would unleash it into screaming devastation. It was on a sweltering August afternoon in 1892, the kind where the heat shimmered like a mirage of regret, that Elias first laid eyes on the forbidden twins. They were Mira and Lena Hawthorne, sisters of ethereal beauty, untouched by the world's cruelties, virgins to both love and hardship in a town that chewed up innocence like brittle tumbleweed. The Hawthorns had arrived in Dust Hollow 6 months prior, refugees from the eastern cities, their father a failed prospector who drank himself into an early grave, leaving the girls to fend for a sprawling, debt-ridden homestead on the edge of the Rio Grande. At 19, Mira and Lena were mirrors of each other, raven hair cascading like midnight rivers, eyes the color of storm clouds, and smiles that could coax wildflowers from parched earth. Yet, they were bound by an unbreakable vow, their mother's dying wish that they remain pure, unyielding to the advances of rough-hewn ranchers who saw them as prizes in a lawless land. Forbidden, they called it, this sisterly pact of self-preservation, a mad frenzy of loyalty that kept suitors at bay with polite ferocity. Elias had ridden into town that day for supplies, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of ochre dust that clung to his Stetson like forgotten sins. He was there to mend a fence on his solitary spread, but fate, that capricious rider, had other plans. As he hitched his mare outside the general store, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street, shouts, the crash of breaking glass, and the unmistakable wail of feminine distress. Without a second thought, Elias pushed through the batwing doors, his presence alone parting the crowd like Moses at the Red Sea. There, cornered against the scarred oak bar, were Mira and Lena, their dresses torn at the sleeves, faces flushed with defiance as 3 drunken cowboys leered, their hands groping like vultures at carrion. "Back off, ladies ain't fair pawin'," Elias growled, his voice a hypnotic murmur that slithered through the smoky air, wrapping around the men's wills like vines on a trellis. The ruffians turned, sneering at the newcomer, but something in Elias's eyes, deep wells of unspoken rage, made them hesitate. One lunged, fist raised, but Elias sidestepped with the grace of a shadow, his murmur deepening into a cadence that echoed the twins' racing hearts. "You boys got families waitin' at home. Dreams bigger than this bottle. Walk away now, for the devil claims what's left of ya." It was no spell of sorcery, but kindness cloaked in steel, the power of seeing the spark of humanity in even the basest soul. The men faltered, mumbling apologies as they stumbled out, leaving the saloon in stunned silence. Mira and Lena stared at their savior, breaths coming in shallow gasps, their hands clasped so tightly the knuckles gleamed white. "Who are you?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling like aspen leaves in a gale. "Just a cowboy passin' through," Elias replied, tipping his hat with a gentleness that belied his colossal frame. But in that moment, as gratitude bloomed in their eyes, he felt the first stirrings of something forbidden, a pull toward these twin flames that threatened to ignite the beast within him. He bought them each a lemonade from the barkeep, listening as they poured out their woes, the failing ranch, the harassing creditors, the isolation that gnawed at their spirits like coyotes on bone. Elias nodded, his murmur weaving tales of his own losses, not to burden but to bridge, showing them they weren't alone in the wilderness of want. Word of the Colossal Cowboy's intervention spread like wildfire across the prairie, drawing wary admiration from Dust Hollow's denizens. Old-timers at the feed store spun yarns of Elias as a guardian spirit, while womenfolk baked him pies laced with unspoken hopes. Yet, for the twins, it was the beginning of a quiet revolution. They sought him out the next dawn, riding double on a borrowed pony to his ranch, baskets brimming with fresh cornbread and wild honey as thanks. Elias, unaccustomed to company, welcomed them with coffee black as midnight, his hypnotic voice recounting stories of the stars, how Orion the hunter once wept for a lost love, teaching that even gods knew heartbreaks sting. Days blurred into weeks, and the twins became fixtures in Elias's solitary world. Mira, the bolder of the two, challenged him to roping contests, her laughter a melody that chased shadows from his corral. Lena, with her thoughtful gaze, mended his shirts and shared verses from a tattered Bible, her words a balm to his scarred soul. In stolen moments, they confessed their fears, the frenzy of poverty that made sleep elusive, the double burden of vigilance against a world that viewed them as fragile glass. Elias listened, his murmur evolving into shared dreams, visions of a communal well for the town, a schoolhouse where children could learn beyond plowing and prayer. It was selflessness incarnate, this exchange, where his strength bolstered their spirits, and their light thawed the ice around his heart. But the plains are no kinder than they are vast, and trouble brewed like a storm on the Llano Estacado. The land baron, Harlan Greaves, a man whose greed knew no bridle, had set his sights on the Hawthorne homestead. Greaves owned half the county through cunning deeds and loaded pistols, and the twins' parcel, rich with untapped spring water, stood as the final thorn in his empire. He sent his foreman, a brute named Rattlesnake Riley, to negotiate, but negotiation meant intimidation, midnight visits with torches and threats of ruin. One moonless night, as Mira and Lena huddled in their cabin, the door splintered under Riley's boot, his shadow a frenzy of malice promising devastation. Elias arrived like thunder's herald, alerted by a neighbor's frantic ride. He found the twins barricaded, Riley's men circling like wolves. "This ain't your fight, Thorne," Riley spat, but Elias's murmur cut through the night, "Every man's fight is when innocence cries out. You got a mother somewhere, Riley, think of her face if this were her door." The words hung, heavy with humanity's fragile thread, and for a heartbeat, Riley wavered, his hand dropping from his holster. But Greaves's poison ran deep, the foreman snarled, drawing iron, and the air exploded in gunfire. In the chaos, Elias took a grazing bullet to the shoulder, crimson blooming on his chambray shirt like a forbidden rose. He felled two assailants with precise shots, not to kill, but to disarm, his voice rising from murmur to a roar that shook the rafters, "Enough. This land ain't for conquerin', it's for carin'." The twins emerged, Lena binding his wound with strips from her petticoat, Mira standing sentinel with a shotgun borrowed from the mantel. Riley fled into the dark, tail between his legs, but the damage was sown, Greaves would retaliate, and the frenzy of retribution loomed. As dawn painted the sky in hues of bruised lavender, Elias slumped against the cabin wall, pain etching lines deeper than years. The twins knelt beside him, tears tracing silver paths down their dust-streaked cheeks. "Why'd you come for us?" Mira asked, her voice breaking. "We're nothin' but trouble." Elias cupped her chin, his touch feather-light. "Because seein' you two shine, it's the first light I've known since the storm took my folks. And light like that? It don't belong hidden. It belongs shared." In that vulnerable hour, a profound realization dawned on them all, the true frenzy wasn't of flesh or fury, but of the heart's wild yearning for connection, a double penetration of souls intertwining against the void. Their bond deepened in the aftermath, a hypnotic dance of healing and hope. Elias taught the twins to ride astride, not side-saddle, symbolizing their break from fragile expectations. They, in turn, introduced him to the joy of communal suppers, inviting ranch hands and widows to feasts under the pecan trees, where stories flowed freer than creek water. Themes of kindness wove through their days, Mira organizing a quilting bee for the needy, Lena reading to the blind elder at the mission, Elias anonymously paying a family's mortgage with earnings from a cattle drive. It was selflessness in action, a murmur against the beast of isolation, proving humanity's power to mend what greed tears asunder. Yet, whispers of the forbidden grew. Townsfolk gossiped of the colossal Cowboy's unnatural attachment to the untouched sisters, branding it a mad entanglement that courted scandal. Greaves fueled the fire, spreading lies of impropriety to sway the sheriff. One fateful evening, as the trio sat by the hearth, a posse thundered up, led not by law, Winter cloaked Dust Hollow in a silver shroud, snowflakes dancing like redeemed spirits over the reborn landscape. The duel averted, Greaves's conversion rippled outward, his vast holdings repurposed into co-ops where sharecroppers owned their toil. The Hawthorne Ranch flourished, springs bubbling freely, irrigating fields that fed the hungry. Mira and Lena, no longer forbidden fruits but beacons of resilience, led literacy circles for migrant workers, their voices a double harmony of hope. Elias, the colossal cowboy, shed his solitary skin, his murmur now a communal anthem sung at barn raisings and harvest moons. Yet, the heart's frenzy is never fully sated, it yearns for deeper unions. One crisp February eve, as stars wheeled overhead like the hands of fate, the twins invited Elias to their hearth for a feast of venison stew and storytelling. The air hummed with unspoken longings, the mad pull of souls entwined, a penetration of spirits that honored their purity of intent. "We've kept mother's vow," Lena said softly, not from fear, but from waitin' for a love that elevates, not claims. Elias knelt before them, his colossal frame humbled. "You too, you're my redemption." The beast in me screamed for isolation, but your kindness whispered peace. In that sacred circle, they pledged not carnal frenzy, but a troika of devotion, marriage under the old mesquite, a union of three hearts beating as one, blessed by a circuit-riding preacher who saw divinity in their unconventional grace. The town, once judgmental, gathered in jubilant witness, toasting with cider to the power of humanity's boundless forms. Unexpected turns lingered, however. Spring unearthed a buried cache on the Hawthorne land, gold nuggets from their father's secret vein, enough to fund a school and orphanage. But with fortune came temptation, outsiders slithered in, eyes greedy, murmuring of easy wealth. One, a silver-tongued swindler named Vance, posed as kin, weaving hypnotic lies to lure the twins into a false claim. Mira fell briefly under his spell, doubt's beast gnawing at her resolve, leading to a clandestine meeting where Vance's true colors flashed, demands for the map, threats veiled in charm. Lena discovered the betrayal, her heart fracturing in a frenzy of sorrow. She rode hellbent for Elias, who was mending fences at dawn. "He's penetratin' our trust, turnin' our gift to poison," she cried. Elias's face darkened, the screaming beast rising, but he reined it with a breath. "We fight not with fangs, but with light." Together, they confronted Vance at the crossroads, not with guns, but with the twins' unyielding truth, gold's just dirt without souls to share it. The swindler, cornered by their compassion, Elias offering him honest work instead of exile, broke, confessing his own orphan past. In that moment of realization, Vance wept, joining their fold as a reformed hand, his devastation transmuted to devotion. The emotional climax surged during the school's dedication, a sun-drenched June day when 200 souls filled the yard. Elias stood at the podium, Mira and Lena flanking him, their hands a linked chain of strength. Orphans in starched pinafores recited verses, farmers shared tools for a communal library. But midway, a dust devil whipped up, symbolic of lingering storms, scattering papers and igniting panic. Elias's beast roared internally, urging him to bellow orders, to dominate the chaos. Instead, he turned to the twins, their eyes a mirror of calm. Together, Mira urged, and they moved as one, Lena directing children to safety with gentle commands, Mira corralling horses with whispered pleas, Elias lifting the frail and frail-hearted to shelter. In the whirlwind's eye, Greaves arrived unbidden, bearing lumber for repairs, not as Baron, but as brother in redemption. "I was the devil once," he boomed to the crowd, voice cracking. "But these three, they showed me mercy's might." The storm broke, rainbow arching like a covenant, and Elias pulled the twins close, his murmur a vow, "Our frenzy ain't of madness, but of makin' whole what's broken. Double the love, tenfold the devastation to darkness." Cheers erupted, a transformative wave washing over Dust Hollow, where acts of generosity birthed a legacy of lifted burdens. Years wove their tapestry onward. The twins bore children, for in all, towhead whirlwinds named for lost kin, raising them in a home where selflessness was supper's grace. Elias, graying at the temples, tamed no more mustangs but minds, his hypnotic tales in the schoolhouse igniting dreams in dusty youth. Greaves mentored apprentices in ethical land stewardship, Vance became the orphanage's steadfast cook, ladling soup with stories of second chances. The forbidden vow evolved into a town ethic, purity of purpose, a mad frenzy of mutual aid that withstood droughts and depressions. As elders, they sat on the porch at sunset, the Rio Grande murmuring lullabies. We started with whispers, Lena reflected, and ended with roars of joy. Mira squeezed Elias's calloused hand. The beast? It was just a shadow, chased by our light. He smiled, eyes misty. Humanity's the true colossus, kindness its murmur, compassion its devastating thunder. In Dust Hollow, legends endure not of frenzy or penetration, but of hearts unbound, proving that in selflessness, we find our wildest salvation. For in giving without tally, we receive the infinite, a world remade, hopeful as dawn's first blush. And so, dear listener, in your own plains of trial, heed the cowboy's murmur, extend the hand, share the light. For in that act, you unleash not devastation, but devastation's antidote, the transformative frenzy of love that echoes eternally.